So we are fast approaching on the 100th episode of You Can Play This. I have been doing this series for 4 years now, and I've noticed that while I have a lot of faithful viewers, most of them don't import. Then why do they even watch the show?
Oh yeah!
Okay, I was kidding on that last part. I actually want all of you to watch the show, whether or not you watch it for my devastatingly good looks,
Devilishly good looks.
or for the video game reviews.
Nah, I think it's for your devilishly good looks, Romeo.
Anyways, I'm going to make the next 3 episodes about how you can import games. Yeah, I know, right? Now for me, it all started in 1990 or 91, where I was looking through a magazine and saw an ad about import games. I thought nothing of it. I later was reading a gaming article that talked about the changes of localizing games for Nintendo, how crosses were removed from Castlevania, how languages sometimes changed, and how some games just even get an overhaul. I went back to the ad, called the store, and got the last of their Famicom games along with a free honeybee. And so I've been importing ever since then and discovering wonderful games that either just never made it overseas, some that got stopped in the middle or at the end of their localization, and even some that just made it over, but I prefer the original Japanese game for one reason or another. There's so many great games out there, and I'm going to teach you about how to play these on the systems that I own. Now, I know that I already did this kind of thing at some of the conventions that I attend, but I wanted to make something more official, as it were. So, let's get to this. So these two systems just do not work together. Let's talk about why. The Famicom uses 60 pins for their gaming carts, while the NES has 72. So what we need is either some way to take the Famicom cart and make it work in an NES, or just use a Japanese Famicom. If you choose to do the latter, in the US, it works without a step-down or a step-up converter. But you must use the power plug that it came with. If you bought a Famicom that came without a power plug, then you can buy an official one online for about $15 shipping and handling. As for playing Famicom games on the NES, you need a converter. Now this can come in many different forms. You can use the honeybee converter, or you use a converter from a first-run NES game. You see, when the NES first came out, they were actually pretty short on games. So they took Famicom games, took the chips out of those, added a small converter inside of the carts, and released those without any need for any translation or anything. You could almost call these the first true imports. You can find these converters by looking on the back of the carts of some of these titles. Look for carts that have 5 screws in the back. That'll whittle it down for the amount that you need to look through. Finally, and the only way to tell, look at the pins. If they have a T-shape, put it back. It doesn't have a converter inside. But if it has an L shape, then you pick it up. You win! So here's how to use the converter when you get it. The honeybee will have a ribbon on it. That's the bottom. You're going to have to attach the game to the honeybee like so and put it into the system. If you bought a converter, then just buy a ribbon and epoxy it to this plastic part here. If you have a big Famicom cart, then you're going to have troubles unless you have a top-loading NES. Otherwise, you need to get a Game Genie and use that as a sort of bridge between your games, adapter, and your console. It doesn't look pretty, but it works, and that's what counts, right? This is an easy difference. Games for the Japanese Super Famicom actually have a flat back in that they only have two little holes just above the bottom, whereas the US games actually have a little tab. Now, this is for tabs that are actually in the system. Otherwise, they have the exact same pin sets and can be played on either system. So how do we play Japanese games on a US SNES since it's got tabs and these won't fit in? Well, inside of your Super Nintendo, we see that we have hard tabs preventing the pins to connect with the system. Here, you'll bring in some wire cutters. The plastic inside the console is soft, so just place the flat of the cutter against the back of the SNES and squeeze. Then jiggle the tab right out. Do that for the other, and you can play your Super Famicom games instantly. If you don't want to damage your machine, then just get a Game Genie, and you can mod that. If you have a Game Shark Pro, well, then you don't even need to mod it. Just plug the game into the top and go at it. Going to be a little bit tougher in that the Japanese and the US carts here are just like Super Nintendo carts. They have tabs, but they're on the wrong ends of each other. The Japanese ones actually have them in the middle, while the US ones have them on the end. And the plastic inside of the console is a little bit harder.
That's what she said.
Really? Really? You just did a "that's what she said" joke? Okay, I just expected more from you.
That's what she said.
For this, you'll either need to get a Japanese Nintendo 64, or get a converter, or mod your console. N64 consoles are pretty reasonable nowadays, and the power cables and connectors are interchangeable with each other. So if you get one for cheap off of eBay or someplace, then you can use existing cables and you can actually save a bundle. As for converters, you can also get an action replay and just plug it in and play away. Now, considering the last option, if you totally cannot wait, then I converted mine this way. I took an X-Acto blade and put it into a soldering gun that allows you to change different blades. And it's not pretty, but it works.
Oi, Kimi! ゲームはいかがですか? いらっしゃいませ! Oh, Japanese no good? No problem! Samurai Tenchu is bilingual! Japanese game too scary? Samurai Tenchu understand! He show you fun, easy game! Cowboy Bebop! Cowboy Bebop is super fun rail shooting game! Pirate swordfish collect money! Customize ship with upgrade parts! Original voice cast is back as your favorite character!
一緒に叩くわよ。ついてらっしゃい。
毎度あり See you, Samurai Customer! Samurai Tencho!
Now, when we get to this point, we're starting to see more and more games localized from Japan and fewer you can play this games. But that's okay, because that just allows us more money for our retro import gaming addiction. Now, for the GameCube, there is a mod that can be done that will allow it to, by a push of a button, switch from US to Japanese back to US regions. But the best way to do this is just to get yourself a freeloader disc. Unlike the PlayStations, which I'll get into the next video, you can open and close the door on the GameCube. Now, this means nothing to you right now, but it will become very apparent how problematic it can be in the next video. Otherwise, just know that the freeloader disc works very nicely and allows for many, well, almost most imports to be played. Although, I only personally have 4 imports, and 3 of those came out in the US. But there are plenty of import games that can be enjoyed on the GameCube. Now here's where I have to stop with the consoles. See, the Wii and the Wii U are both region locked, meaning that there's no tabs to cut, no physical modding that will allow you to easily play games from other regions. You have to have a Japanese Wii and a Japanese Wii U to play import games. But so that we don't end on a downer, let's talk about one more thing. And that's the Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, the DS, and the 3DS. This is going to be super easy. Except for the 3DS, all those other handhelds are region free. So feel free to import games for the Game Boy, for the Game Boy Advance, for the Game Boy Color, for the DS. Those are all region free and can be played on any systems. When it comes to the 3DS, it is only region locked to other 3DS games. So, if you have an American 3DS and a Japanese DS game, it will totally play on your US system. It's great that way. It's only locked for other 3DS games. So, having said that, this is the end of part 1. Part 2 will include a couple of different systems from a couple of different companies, and actually some of my favorite importing is on those systems.
You think that you can play this?